Hi, my name is Stropek from Cockpit, and today I want to demonstrate the sample that we created for this month's newsletter. In this sample, we show how you can use Cockpit's REST API to export data and import it to Microsoft Power BI. Microsoft Power BI is a great system to do self-service reporting, self-service dashboarding, play with data, and gain some additional insights from your data. On the other hand, Cockpit is a great system for managing your timesheet, for having a financial overview over all your projects and customers, about your revenue and things like that. So it's absolutely natural to bring these two systems together, and this is what I want to show you. Let me first show you our goal. What do we want to achieve? Here you see the Cockpit web interface. You might know that if you are already a Cockpit user. And we can, for instance, go here and take a look at the invoices that has been created for this account. We can do some analysis here. We can, for instance, change the structure of the list. We see some totals and subtotals. We can change the filtering, apply some filtering here, and we see that we have a total of 228k euro in that case revenue, and we have some built-in reporting mechanism here in Cockpit too. Here you see one example report of the revenue per customer. But wouldn't it be nice if we had a system like Power BI where we can take our data from Cockpit and build interactive dashboards? Let me show you an example. Here I built two interactive dashboards for this demo, and the first one gives you an overview of the revenue by country. Here you see some countries where our demo customers made revenue. You see again the 228k euro revenue here, and you see it's highly interactive. If we want to focus on Germany, we can click on Germany. If we want to focus on Ireland, we can click on Ireland. You see the system is changing the filters dynamically based on your selection. I can also select here in the map, select Germany, for instance, and again we filter down there to the revenue and customers of Germany. Let me select all. I also have a slicer here in the right lower corner where I can start asking questions for customers, and we see that Marlin Trading only had revenue in United Kingdom, and if I select, for instance, these three, I only see these three, and I see the revenue split by country. This is the kind of dashboard I'm talking about. Or let's take a look at an example with timesheets. Here I see the timesheets for a certain employee, and maybe let's take May here. We see the days of the month, and the employee worked between 7 and 9 hours per day. And I can ask questions like, for instance, hey, which customer did I work on that particular day? And you see here the overall split of the working duration an hour, and here I see the selected part. So at the highlighted day, I worked 3 hours for a company that is called Mortimer Engineering. Let's remove this filter again, and for instance select this one to see on which other days I worked on Mortimer Engineering, and I see, for instance, that on that day I worked 4 hours for Mortimer Engineering. So you see, this kind of highly interactive dashboarding, this is what I mean, and this is what's really simple with Power BI. If you've never worked with Power BI, let me quickly show you how easy it is to build such a dashboard. For instance, I go here to my invoices. This is the invoices dataset that came from Cockpit, and you will see how we can build the integration ourselves in a minute. But first, let's concentrate on what we can do here in Power BI. I can, for instance, easily add a chart, and this chart should display, let's make that a bit more larger, the different projects, and show us the revenue. And immediately we have the revenue per project. We can make that one a bit larger, or we decide that we don't want to do that by project, but we want to do that by customer. And if we add, for instance, a bar chart, a pie chart here. Oh, sorry. I want to add a new pie chart here, and in that case I want to see the split by country, revenue, and you see the interactivity is built in. I don't have to do any fancy programming to have this nice functionality of selection and filtering and so on. So you see, this is what we want to achieve. We want to focus on integrating Time Cockpit with Power BI so that such nice interactive and highly graphical dashboards become possible. So how is that done? Let's take a look behind the scenes. Before you can start working with Power BI, you need a Power BI account, of course. The nice thing is that there is a free pricing tier for Power BI, so if you just get started or you want to play with the system, and if you are happy with 1 GB of data that you can store inside of Power BI, then Power BI will not get you to pay anything for the system. So in my case, I already created a Power BI user and account here, and with that I just signed in. But let me use the Internet Explorer here, because I switched my Internet Explorer to English so you can follow along. So here I signed on with my account into Power BI. Next, we have to use some programming, but don't worry, we have created a sample module for you that makes it very easy to just transfer your data from Time Cockpit to Power BI using REST APIs. But in order to let this small script run, we have to register. We have to register our application with the Office 365 Active Directory, with the Azure Active Directory that sits behind Power BI. And that is done inside of the Azure portal. I opened it here, so what I did is I went to manage.windowsazure.com, I entered my credentials, you see it here, reiner@softwarearchitects.com, and with that I come here into my directory. That is essentially the directory that sits behind our Office 365 subscription. And here is a menu item which is called application, and I go into this menu item, and you see I already created the Time Cockpit Power BI Integrator sample solution, and we can go in here, and the important part is here in this configure tab. In our case, it doesn't matter what you have as a sign-on URL. You can enter anything as shown here. But the important thing is the client ID. You have to copy this client ID to the clipboard because you will need it later on. The next thing is the key. You have to create a key with a validation period, and you have to also copy this key to the clipboard or maybe to a notepad or something like this, because you will need it later on. And finally, you have to set the permissions. So in my case, I set, oh sorry, this is the wrong one, this is the right one. I gave all the permissions, but essentially what we are going to do is we are going to read and write data sets and view data sets. So we only need these two permissions for our sample, but you can also give it more here, so you can play around with the entire Power BI API. So once you set up this application, and this will only take you 5 minutes or so, we can start writing our code. We can start pulling data from Time Cockpit using the Time Cockpit REST API and pushing it into Power BI. For that, we have created a sample. Let me quickly open that sample for you. Here you see the sample code in GitHub, so you can get the sample code from this URI, github.com, Software Architects, that's the name of our company, Time Cockpit Power BI Export, easy to remember. And we copy the URI, and here I have a command prompt with an empty directory, and let's clone the repository into this directory here. So you have to install Git in order to get going, and now we have it here, and here we see the code. Now we need only a few statements to compile the sample and to get going. The first one is we have to do an npm install. This will install all the libraries that we need for our small JavaScript scriptlet. So in this case, I'm using Node.js, and this Node.js application uses some tools like the async library, the chalk library, the needle library, and it uses TypeScript as the programming language. This npm install created our Node modules folder, and it was successful. The next thing is we have to pull down from the internet the TypeScript type definitions for the library we use, and we do a tsd reinstall, save. That goes to GitHub and gets some TypeScript type definition files and stores them in the typings directory. Okay, looks good. Next, we can run TypeScript to compile our TypeScript code. It's just two applications here, and I will show you that in a minute. And that is done by calling the TypeScript compiler. We just pull down, so we say run node and go to TypeScript and bin and tsc. And this will compile our code, and that's it. And if we take a look, we now have our JavaScript code ready to get going. Well, let's take a look at the source code. I will use Visual Studio Code here. Visual Studio Code is an entirely free application. It's open source and it's very lightweight. It runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, it runs on Linux, so you can follow along with the sample on all these operating systems. Let's take a look at the app.ts, because this is where the important code is for our sample. And it's very simple. The heavy lifting is done in this imported TS file here, and if you are a Node programmer or you are interested in the details how I created the sample for you, feel free to play around with the imported TS file, but you have to have some basic knowledge about things like async, like OData, like REST APIs, Needle, Node.js, and so on. But we will focus on this one, the app.ts, and it's very simple. The important part is just one single method call. This method call does the import data, and it gets, the first thing that it gets here is a so-called TCQL query. It's a Time Cockpit query language query. If you're not familiar with Time Cockpit or Time Cockpit query language, let me show you what this is. This is the query language that we use inside of Time Cockpit. Here I have my Time Cockpit full client, and if you are an advanced user, if you have administrator privileges, you can go in the customization area here. Let me create a new TCQL script for you and copy the code from our app.ts inside of this tab here. You see, we select some data from the invoice entity. You might know that Time Cockpit has a very extensible data model, so you can create your own tables and relations and properties and business logic and workflow rules and all this stuff. In that case, I'm going to the invoice table. I can even take a look at how this invoice table looks like. You see, it has a bunch of properties. It has one relation to the project. Every invoice in this data model belongs to a project. And I get here the year of the invoice, the month of the invoice, the total revenue, the customer, the country, and the project. Here in the TCQL editor, I can just hit execute, and I can interactively take a look at the data, and I can adopt the TCQL until I'm fine with it. Once you're done with this, you copy this and paste it here in the import data sample code here. The second step that we have to do is we have to tell Power BI the schema of our TCQL. You see, invoice year, here you see invoice year. It's a number. Invoice month, customer, customer. I think you get the point. This one, the first line here, it's something special. The object UUID, it's a unique identifier for every row that Time Cockpit generates. It's always there. You can't get rid of it. You don't have to specify it in TCQL. You have to add this line to make things work. If you want, you can add multiple import data statements here like shown here. But in that case, I'm just doing the import of the invoices here. So let's give it a try. Let's go here to my Power BI, and you see I deleted all my data sets. This is a completely fresh Power BI dashboard here, and I don't have any data sets. So go to the command prompt and let's run it. You see here it is app.js, so we can say node app.js. The problem, if I would run that, it wouldn't work. The problem is that the system now has no idea with which user it should connect. It needs the client ID, it needs the client secret that we got from Azure Active Directory a few minutes ago, lots of passwords, users, and things like that. For playing with the scripts on your PC, I created a small helper here. I called it run sample. I would encourage you to rename it to just run.cmd. And here you have to fill in the gaps. You have to add the app ID. And this is the app ID that we got from, let me see if I still have it open. No, I closed it. We got from the Azure portal. You add the tenant that you get from the Azure portal. You add the app secret that you got from the Azure portal. Then you specify user and password for Power BI. That's probably your Office 365 user account. And you specify user and password that you use to register, to log in to Time Cockpit. And at the end, it calls Node app.js. This is important. You see these things are passed by environment variables, and you will see in a few more minutes why this is important. So for my demo here, I created a run.cmd where all these things are filled out, but I hope it's okay for you that I will not show that on the video because it contains a lot of users and passwords and things like that. Here I have my run.cmd and I'm just copying it over to this folder here. Here is my run.cmd. I will not open it and go here and just say run. And this will now kick off the import process. This Node.js application accesses Time Cockpit using the REST API, and it accesses Power BI using the REST API. So it's just shuffling data around, you doing some JSON and things like that. And you see, the import was successful. So if the import was successful, we should, and here it is, we should have a data set here inside of Power BI. I can show you that again because it's quite nice. You don't have to do any refreshing here. You just run the script, you go to Power BI, just wait for a few more moments, and here it is, invoices appeared, and we can start playing with our data, adding some country revenue, and here it is, just as I've shown you before. So it's very simple to get this thing running and to let it run locally. However, this is nice, but probably we want to do that on a regular basis. We want to schedule the refresh of the data, so our Power BI data, which acts as a kind of data warehouse or data mart, as a storage for your data, but this data has to be refreshed on a regular basis. How can we do that? Again, Azure is our friend. We can use Azure Web Apps with web jobs to regularly refresh our data. Let me show you how you can do that. So let me close that one and open a new window here and log in to Azure, manage.windowsazure.com. I get asked for my passwords. Let me quickly do that. Cloud, and here it is. This is a Microsoft account, just a demo environment. Okay, here I am in the current production portal. I'm using the manage.windowsazure.com here and not the portal.azure.com because some features that I'm going to demonstrate are not available at portal.azure.com. If you watch this video in a few months, you will probably see all the features in the new portal. However, I'm here in the old one. What I created for you is a so-called web app. Let me zoom in a bit here. It's a so-called web app. I called it Time Cockpit Power BI. Let's take a look at this web app. It's very simple to create a web app. If you have never done that before, just hit new. Click here. Oh, I see it's in German. Let me switch to English so that the English-speaking audience can follow along. It's very simple to create a web app, and there is a free pricing tier for web apps. So if you just needed to transfer a small range of data from Time Cockpit to Power BI, you will probably the free tier will probably be fine for you. In that case, I already created one, and what you see here is the so-called web jobs area. Let me take a look in the web jobs here. I already created a web job here, but I tried it before I recorded this video, but for the sake of this demo, let's create a new web job. What our goal is to run this web job on a regular basis and do the same import that we just did here in our command line. So give it a name. Let's call it Time Cockpit Export. And here it wants to have a zip file with the script. Let's create the zip file. I go here and we are here. This is the wrong one. Let me quickly move to the correct directory. Power BI. Here we are. This is the directory we were just working in. And you select the Node modules folder. These are the libraries that you need to run your application. And select the app.js and the importer.js and put all these things together in a zip file. Importer.zip is nice, and copy the path and add the zip file here. That's it. And here is the nice thing. You can say running on a schedule. You can tell the system that it should run every day, every hour, every week, whatever you need. But for this demo, I will just run on demand. But you see, this is the point where Azure Web Job will regularly refresh your data. Okay, the system will create my web job. Essentially, it will upload, you see it here, it will upload my import.zip file, and this will take a few more moments until we have reached 100%. There is some optimization potential here. You don't need the entire Node modules folder, but well, it would have just saved us for 5 seconds or so. Now, here we have our script, our web job, and now I want to run this web job in Azure. So I want the system to push data from, pull data from Time Cockpit and push it into Power BI, but I don't want to run that on my local computer, so I hit run once. And now the web job is running, and it successfully ran, as you can see here. And we can even take a look at the logs. So let me copy this thing out here, open a new tab, and take a look at the logs. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. I didn't copy it. Now it opened a new tab, and it now, yeah, here it is. You see, it finished 23 seconds ago. So let's take a look. And if I zoom in a little bit, you will see exactly the same output that you have seen here before. The import succeeded, and here the import succeeded too, and we have pushed our data using an Azure Web Job from Time Cockpit to Power BI. So now we can get going and have fun with our data here in Power BI, create impressive dashboards to get even more data and insight out of Time Cockpit's powerful database. I hope you liked this short presentation, and I hope you find it valuable. I will publish all the source code and a short write-up of the sample in our blog. That is, let me show you that one. That is www.timecockpit.com blog. Here you see our blog. I will add a new blog item in the next few hours here, and you will find it there. And feel free to download the source code and contact us. Here you see the contact us link if you have any questions about hooking up your Time Cockpit with Power BI. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.